Our story begins with a young man wearing glasses, who goes on a sunny day to a kind of tournament in a stadium, which is attended by a large number of people. Inside the dome, you can see that it is full. Everyone is excited for the show to begin. Suddenly, the speaker of the show begins, making the opening presentation, mentioning that he is already there, the best player of the 6th and 7th World Championship, making a dramatic pause. Lee, Taeho. Among the crowd and the rest of the participants, we see a nervous young man appear. That's our protagonist, who suddenly finds himself surrounded by a kind of gladiators and fighters of enormous size compared to him, in a kind of Roman Colosseum, somewhat different from the previous scenario. Their two fighters wonder at the oddity of his name and are also surprised by his clothing that is not similar to theirs, and that he is much smaller in size. Suddenly, both fighters look at each other. One of them claims to the other that he killed him, and the other mocks him. At the same time, they seem to be getting ready to fight. Our protagonist is surprised to see what is happening, and suddenly you find yourself in the middle of trying to figure out what is going on. Both combatants give each other hateful looks, and in a change of momentum they shake hands and remember that they had a good fight. Both know that if they are there, it means that the two fighters died. The second fighter tells the other that he was exterminated by a 5-braided boy who attacked him through his stomach while screaming "Father." The other fighter celebrates that it was his son, Vior. Then the first fighter rejoices, celebrating that it was his son who defeated him, for which he is proud, and the other one congratulates him for having raised his son as a great warrior. At this point, our protagonist watches the argument between them. Taeho, perplexed, tries to understand how he got to this place. In another scene, we see a flash where we can appreciate Lee Taeho again in the tournament of the beginning, in which we know that he is a computer game player and a very good one, so much so that the audience has banners with his name. But when he was about to win the tournament for the 3rd time, something happens, and we see how he seems to have a heart attack and fainted on the keyboard. There, our protagonist is frustrated to know that just when he was going to be the winner, he passed to the other world. While he laments, a beautiful warrior-like woman praises him in front of everyone, saying that he is a great warrior, winner of dozens of duels. The rest of the fighters begin to say that despite being so small, he is a king of duels, so he must be very skilled with the techniques. Even several of them want to fight against him to prove it. Taeho, standing next to the woman, looks at what is happening around him in disbelief. A little nervous, our prota stares at the beautiful young woman, thinking that because of her, now everyone wants to fight with him, while she looks at him with a mischievous face. Now we return again to what happened in the video game tournament, in which we see the protagonist passed out on the keyboard in front of everyone, and his ghost version is watching everything. Suddenly an intense light blinds him. In front of him appears the beautiful woman, who tells him that those who lost their lives at the end of a fierce battle. Then we see a little more of the body of the female figure. She continues talking and says that they are those who have a warrior's soul, while he stammers, thinking that he really lost his life. We see, again, the curves and part of this woman's attire. While Taeho wonders if he is really dead, she tells him to go with her, with a tender look and a beautiful body. But Taeho asks him where they are going, and he hopes it is not hell. She doesn't answer him, she just takes his hand. They both fly away, while she tells him that they are going to Valhalla, and at lightning speed, surrounded by colors, they fly away. Without letting go of his hand, Taeho stammers as he asks Valhalla. Shouting Taeho, they disappear straight to the stars, and thus culminates the memory. Then they explain to him that Valhalla is the place, according to Norse mythology, to which you end up if you die a great warrior. So the prota tries to explain to him that he is being mistaken for a real warrior. Taeho tells her that he is really just a professional video game player, but she does not understand. Taeho only wants her to return him to where he was. But at that moment, the sound of a trumpet is heard. She shouts to all the warriors to get ready for battle, because the enemy has arrived. While everyone is shouting and getting into combat position, our prota is just scared because he doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, a pack of ferocious armed beasts approached rapidly, and the battle between the two groups began. Lee Taeho just stares at it, thinking that this is crazy. He continues to panic, not knowing what to do, wielding a heavy sword in his hands, which he has never done before. During the war, the prota thinks that when he dies, he gets there. As he thinks about what will happen if he dies again, a beast is about to attack him. And just when the ferocious monster launches a direct attack, right on Taeho's back, another gladiator appears who shouts "Young Duck," and with a skillful movement, faces the beast, hitting him hard with a super fist called Deep Anger. This fighter also asks the prota if he doesn't know about the saga. While the warrior's life is being saved, our prota, all scared and nervous, grabs his head trying to understand what saga means. During the fight, the gladiator asks him again if he knows what the saga is, but Leetaeho only adjusts his glasses without understanding yet. Then the gladiator continues talking and explains that if he is in Valhalla means that he has achievements that were known from his previous life that make him worthy of being there, and that these achievements are his greatest power, so the more known he is, the stronger warrior he can become with his skills from his previous life. At all these times, the prota is left thinking about his achievements. As much as you try to remember, failure to know any important achievement, and he only remembers that what he was doing was eating and playing. Suddenly, he pauses, and the image of a knight riding a horse comes to his mind. Taeho tries to concentrate, and after a dramatic pause, remember that his character in the video game was Karlstad, an immortal warrior, and then a glowing energy begins to envelop Taeho's entire body. The warrior explained to him during the battle that was still going on that everyone has a saga, and asked him if he could see some shiny letters in front of him. To which the prota replies that although he does not recognize the symbols, he can read them. A few seconds later, the prota manages to see something that says Saga, the Immortal Warrior, synchronization of the 1%. Then he understands that this title belongs to Karlstad, his hero of the video game, and thinks that as well as he manages his character, he can manage this power, but while he continues thinking how to do it. But then the gladiator next to him interrupts him, telling him to look straight ahead, and that in front of the prota there was a huge beast. This ferocious armed beast was about to attack him, and when he launches a frontal attack, the prota performs a super move backwards. This was one of Karlstad's powers. But the fight wasn't over yet, and the huge beast again tries to attack him with a mega hammer, while Taeho assesses that Karlstad, his video game character, can easily defeat him. So the prota thinks something is wrong with the saga. It has only 1% of all the power of Karlstad. Try to focus your lenses to read well. For which he gets annoyed shouting, while the other warrior laughs thinking that the prota is very funny. Then the warrior tells him that the saga is not over yet, and that his own story is just beginning. After that, the warrior introduces himself as Bjorn, and hopes that the prota stays alive so they can meet again. After that, Taeho is a bit tired of what is happening. Then Taeho sees his sword in the distance and thinks about the percentage of his character's power, analyzing that even though the percentage is so low of the Karlstad power, it should be enough to finish off the monster, and then he launches himself straight towards the beast to pick up his sword. Karlstad's character was a superhuman who could take on hundreds of soldiers by himself. Then, with the character's dexterity, the prota manages to recover his sword, then wields the weapon and decides to face the beast holding the giant hammer. This is how the fight between them begins, with which you will learn about the legend of Karlstad, while Taeho is filled with courage to face the enemy. Despite the attacks, the beast does not manage to hurt him, remembering the glory days when everyone cheered for Taeho in the video game tournament. Immediately, the prota moves nimbly towards the beast, tearing it to pieces and like lightning. He then rushes into the camp of enemy beasts like a thunderbolt, while shouting Leetaeho's Karlstad. Immediately, as in the video game, the image of Saga the Warrior's charge is like a storm appears, and we see Taeho as he makes his way in front of the beasts, creating a shockwave and annihilating them, albeit in a somewhat clumsy way. It lands badly and is supposed to be another unlocked skill, as he remembers his achievements, like this one that gives him improved speed. Already a little more confident, our prota thinks that with his saga skills he will be able to survive. Finally, we see again the facade of a huge old building. After the fight, we see everyone celebrating while some drink and clink their glasses, celebrate surviving the fight while drinking alcohol. There we see our prota eating a piece of meat. Meanwhile, he thinks that if this is his nightly feast, and there is only meat and alcohol, but as there is nothing else, he will have to resign himself. At another table, someone shouts at him that if he wants better food, he will have to raise the level of his inner warrior's rank. It was Bjorn who explained that this was the banquet hall for newcomers and low-ranking warriors, and that was why the food and drink were so simple. There, Proda asks Bjorn if he is also a low-ranking warrior, to which he replies while laughing that he was just there to check. Taeho thanked him for his help, because thanks to him he had been able to survive, and he really appreciated the gesture. Besides, he had explained to him about the saga. Taeho, a little intrigued. After a few minutes, the Proda asks Bjorn what happens if he dies in Valhalla, to which he replies that if a soul dies there, then it will be sent to the Iron Warrior, a place where they feel neither pain nor hunger, a place where they will be able to fight for eternity. Immediately, Taeho shouts that this is not an Iron Warrior, that it is actually an iron coffin. For this reason, he has no intention of dying in Valhalla, but is interrupted by Bjorn, who tells him that he will soon be assigned a legion. The Proda asks him what legion means, but Bjorn points to the stage and tells him that he will find out. Then we see someone approaching. This person shouts to all the warriors present that he has seen their performance in combat, and that it is now time to announce the legions that each of them will join. At the table, Proda exclaims the name Valkyrie, but Bjorn corrects him by telling him that she is Reginleif, Odin's daughter. At once, Reginleif raises his sword and tells them to look into their cups where they are drinking, so that they may know the name of the one to whom they will bear allegiance. Back at the table, Bjorn tells the Proda that from that moment on they will be assigned to a legion of the Asgardian gods, and that in this way he will receive more power from the god that is marked for him. But Taeho only knows Odin and Thor. Before raising his mug, the Proda thinks that if he is going to get more power, then he hopes it is from the strongest god in existence, and prays that it is Odin or Thor. Suddenly we see our Proda sailing on a river, accompanied by a beautiful lady, who carries the oars of the boat, and there are only the two of them, while he also questions himself if he had not been told that the legion was of a god. So he takes his hands on his head and screams with rage, which is interrupted by the girl who asks him why he has had that attitude since the beginning of the trip, and he replies that how is it possible that there are only the two of them? The beautiful girl tells him not to worry, that in her legion she also has the strength to compete with the others, and that the good thing is that there is no one above them to scold them, nor anyone below them to cause them inconvenience. She goes on to tell him that this is excellent, a total paradise, that news, but Taeho only bothers to know that he is the only person with her. But what has happened? Let's go back to the scene in the Great Hall, as he lifted his cup. The Proda sees a strange symbol, while the other fighters celebrate for the legions they got, like Odin or Thor. However, Taeho got IDUN, but he does not know which one it is. And making a fixed glance at Bjorn, so still without understanding, he asks Bjorn that he didn't know about that legion, a little disappointed about that. To complete, Bjorn, with his distressed face, only answers him that he must be strong, leaving the Proda with uncertainty about why he has that expression on his face. They immediately begin to request the warriors according to their respective legions, such as Odin. Reginleif begins to place them according to the legion that corresponds to them, Thor's, Freya's. Little by little, all the warriors are grouped in rows. Taeho begins to walk, trying to look for the IDUN legion, but there is no trace of anyone. So he begins to shout the name of the IDUN legion. Minutes later, we see the girl who was accompanying him on the boat, who seems to be waking up when she hears the name of the legion that the Proda was looking for. She is a little sleepy. He apologizes for waking her up with the screams looking for the legion, and he tells him that he belongs to the IDUN legion. To which she is very happy to be him, the first person to arrive, and without respecting his personal space, she moves very close to Taeho. As she tells him that it has been a long time since they had a new member, he holds his breath, thinking she is too close to his face, so she decides to introduce herself by telling him her name is. But we are back again to the Riverwalk scene, and we learn that the Proda calls her Hida when he calls her by name and asks her what they are fighting and why. The Proda stares at her as she calmly raises her hand and tells him to explain. When he raises his palm, he shows him a kind of map, showing him that this is the world, in which he can see where Asgard is, the place where they are. Then there is a red, incandescent core. Beyond that is Muspelheim, a place where evil gods, giants, and demons are invading and doing harm. Lee, Taeho, interrupts her by asking her what the red core means, but Heda answers that that place was called Eren, but it was already destroyed and now they were the first line of defense, against an enemy that tries to destroy the world. Amazed, the Prota asks if by any chance that is Ragnarok. He assumes something about it, because of what he has learned from video games. Heda, with an alarming look, answers that it is so, that they are in a war, for the Ragnarok, which will determine the fate of the world, and we see scenes of fighting beasts, gods, and warriors, fighting to protect the world. Heda, however, clarifies that, rather than defend the world, they fight to survive, to what an idea comes to our Prota, if it would be possible to travel between worlds, which would mean that he could return to his original world. At all these, he is interrupted from his thoughts when Heda tells him that they have arrived at their destination, as he parks the boat on a dock and informs him that they are at the temple of the goddess, so as he has become a warrior of the goddess, he must enter and pay his respects. Minutes later, we see them walking through the interior of the temple, which is completely deserted, just them walking through the huge corridor, while he asks Heda if he will meet the goddess there. Finally, they arrive at a kind of altar, and Heda answers that he will meet her from a distance, because the goddess lives in the heights. Wasting no time, Heda tells him to stand in the middle of the altar and drop an object, giving him something shiny which he questions by asking if it is just a golden apple. A little incredulous and in the middle of the altar, Lee Taeho follows Heda's indications, dropping the apple, hoping that it will work, when suddenly, as soon as the apple touches the floor of the altar, everything is illuminated with a radiant light, and in front of him appears the specter of Idun, the goddess of life and youth, who tells the Prota that he is her warrior and that he should come a little closer to her. The Prota, blinded by the bright light and a little frightened, slowly approaches the goddess, who stands in front of a huge leafy tree of light. Surprised, Taeho bows with a bow as a sign of respect. Idun, continuing to speak, tells him that just as water flows up and down, the body naturally becomes more cut, and at the end of that sentence, she places her hand on him, telling him that she will grant him her blessing. Idun continues speaking while telling him that the Protector's vitality mantra will protect his body from the threat of death. As she speaks, our Prota feels an energy coursing through his body, feeling a great power. Our Prota received a blessing of health and youth, for which he is happy and says that all his diseases that he had developed in his previous life have disappeared, such as back pain, stomach pain, carpal tunnel syndrome, and other symptoms have disappeared. Idun disappears, but not before telling him to look forward to his future achievements. On the floor, Lee Taeho observes Heda, who tells him that he has received the blessing. Heda tells him that Idun is the goddess of immortality and youth, so now he can withstand the pain on the battlefield, even those wounds that could cause death, so it would be almost difficult for him to die because he has the blessing of life, but our Prota is only thinking that she is very pretty. As he sits down, Heda continues to tell him that as he grows older, his blessing will become stronger, and an additional detail is that his legion is known by the name of the Zombie Legion. Lee Taeho remains silent and then asks Heda if when he manages to defeat all the enemies, he will be able to return to where he used to live. He laughs and thinks he was a little cold to ask that, and assumes she will blush at his bravery. She just smiles tenderly, as she thinks it's cute that he thinks he can do that, defeating everyone. However, Heda responds that at the culmination of the war, only if they win can that wish be realized. Heda goes on to say that if he really wants to go back, then he will. He really wants to go back as he thinks that place is crazy and it can't be very joyful to be there. Heda extends her hand to help him off the ground, and when he touches her, he thinks she has a warm and soft hand. As they stand up, they are very close, making the Prota blush and thinking that after all, maybe he has a little joy there. Continuing with the story, now we see Heda, dressed in another kind of clothes, something more modern and of this time. Suddenly, Lee Taeho arrives at the house, elegantly dressed in a suit. She welcomes him cordially to the kitchen, while he takes off his shoes and puts his briefcase on the floor. It seems that Lee Taeho is coming home from work. Next, she gives him a spoon with a piece of meat. On the dining table, there is rice and other things. Lee Taeho is tender with Heda for giving him the food in his mouth, but as soon as he bites into it, it is as if he is biting a hard boot. Then we return to a tavern, where we see both of them dressed as before, and it was only Lee, Taeho, daydreaming. But the tough meat brought him out of his trance, and Heda asks him if he is all right. She tells him that the meat is a little tough, but if he works hard, he will move up the ranks so things will get better. Heda goes on to explain that if they move up a level, they will get better benefits and therefore better meals and good places to stay. Heda encourages you to do so. Suddenly, Taeho has another vision in which he sees himself with Heda in a garden with a son, and the three of them are a happy family. However, this vision is interrupted with the vibrations emitted by the Han River, and the system sends a message that Taeho's levels of disillusionment have reached a critical level. Moments later, we see Heda with the Prota at a camp, where she explains to him that every time he defeats an enemy, he will earn runes. Taeho tells him that the previous fight in which he won, he felt that his body absorbed a red energy, so Heda tells him that it is correct that he probably has some runes too. Even when he opens his hand, some symbols appear, and she tells him that the runes he obtains can be used to strengthen the abilities he desires. Among the skills are strength, willpower, agility, magic, and endurance. Taeho asks Heda that he understands some skills, but he wants to know what magic and willpower are. Heda explains to him that magic increases his magical attacks and defenses, and that willpower improves concentration and mental defenses. The Prota replies that little by little he understands, and asks him if it is possible to improve the saga with magic. Heda responds that sagas are unique, so they can only get stronger is when more people know the story, and the stronger their beliefs are, then the saga will be more powerful. Heda goes on to explain that even sometimes sagas can be stronger than the reality of them. An example would be the story of the capture of a great snake, and the legend is about slaying a dragon. Also, that usually the sagas of low-rank warriors are really simple, so they only increase their strength or speed, and that although it is impressive, it is not what makes a true saga. The reality is that a saga should be the embodiment of a legend, so some effects can be fun. Heda explains that he can make weapons, transform, or even summon an army, but that Taeho must remember something, and that is that bringing out the power of his saga and making it truly powerful will depend on him. Here we pause dramatically for the Prota to say that they will know his story, the legend of the Dragon Knight Karlstad. However, as he speaks aloud, he is interrupted by something. It is the sound of which are echoing throughout the camp, to which Heda tells him what since he understands the idea, and with the alarm of the bells, it means that they have been summoned and it is time to deploy. Suddenly a portal opens in front of them. Heda tells him that he must enter the purple portal so that he can get to the selected location, and that once they are all gathered, they will go to the battlefield. But before entering the portal, Taeho is wearing other clothes, including a shield on his back and a sword. We see that Heda has put her in an outfit according to the place. Although she says that it fits her perfectly, we can see that the Prota feels that it is too tight. He then takes his leave walking towards the gate, but is stopped by Heda, who calls him by name. Turning uncertain why she called him, Heda tells him not to die. With a little fear and then assurance, Taeho replies that he should not worry, that he will not die thanks to IDUN's blessing, or so she had told him. Heda stands watching him as Taeho leaves. Step by step, Taeho goes through the portal. When he crosses it, he realizes that he is in the middle of all the gladiators and fighters. Then he realizes that they are waiting for a great fight. Suddenly a slap hits him on the shield on his back. When he turns around, it is his friend Bjorn who greets him and is happy to see Taeho. Bjorn tells him that he looks much better and that his assigned Valkyrie is a real beauty, something that bothers Taeho a little. However, Bjorn again gives him a strong pat on the back, telling him that in fact all Valkyries are beautiful. After the cordial greeting, he tells him to go find his legion, that unlike the previous battle, in this one they will have a commander. Among the crowd appears a kind of Viking who looks intimidatingly at Taeho and asks him if he is another one of the IDUN Legion. After an awkward pause, the Viking tells him that since he looks weird standing alone in a row, he'd better get to the end of another row. Once everyone is located, the Viking introduces himself and motivates everyone to start with the preparations with his name of Ragnal, representative of the Heimdall Legion, who will be guiding them in this battle. Ragnal informs them that this battle is to recover the territory taken by Null, and that they will be left in the middle of the battlefield where the fighting is more intense. At a shout from Ragnal, the portal opens, and he tells the rest of the group that his warriors of Valhalla are going into battle, and that it is for Asgard and the 9 realms. In front of each row of warriors, a purple portal opens. Ragnal informs them that he will lead the way. They follow him. The rest of the warriors support him and celebrate his confidence. But Taeho, because of his size and how far away he is, does not see anything. Suddenly, some icy mountains appear. In the place, there are other warriors. They are fighting against a pack of wolves. The warriors realize that reinforcements have arrived to help them. Moments later, from the top of a mountain, there is a strange figure holding a giant hammer. At the bottom of the mountain where the fight between beasts and warriors takes place, everyone looks up, puzzled as to what he is doing up there. But it doesn't take that long, and from the heights, he throws himself into the void. This one falls in the middle of everyone throwing them into the air. He is a giant wolf. It is Boss White Fang. The warriors are surprised by his size, think he is crazy, and realize he is the leader of the monsters. Some fighters say that it is 4 or 5 times bigger than the rest of the beasts and everyone, but they are not intimidated, and one of them shouts that they should not stay with their mouths open but attack. At the back of Comelo Blanco, the gateway opens up. Inside, the voices of the Vikings can be heard, and Ragnal appears, leading the group of enraged fighters to attack. But just at the end of the tunnel, the imposing beast of the giant wolf can be seen. And as soon as the warriors cross the portal, they see the enormous White Fang, and both Ragnal and those behind him are frightened by the size of the wolf that intimidates with its appearance, and with a swing of his hammer he throws the fighters into the air. One of the last to leave the portal is Taeho. The wolf lets out a super roar straight at the Prota, who had not yet seen the beast. Seconds later, Taeho wonders who was the idiot who opened the portal in that place. Scene begins as in the fighting video games that face each other in a versus, in a corner Comelo Blanco versus. The Prota tries to calm down and think of a strategy as he would when facing the boss of a level in a game. Taeho tries to focus on what to do first. And what Taeho does is to think that with the great hammer of the beast, he could crush the tough meat he eats. But on second thought, he knows that he will not be able to withstand a blow from that weapon with his shield, for it would shatter him and he would be wounded. So with a swift movement, he throws his shield and decides to use one of the 5 runes he possesses. Focusing on agility, immediately we see the shadow of the big hammer heading towards our Prota at high speed, but with his new power, he moves quickly, managing to dodge it to the astonishment of the rest of the warriors watching the combat. Many of them are injured though, as Taeho makes his way through them. But Taeho knows that it is useless just to dodge the blows, so he decides to try to attack his legs as a weak point, and the rest of the warriors also aim at the legs of White Fang and throw themselves directly to the legs of the beast. To all these, Taeho stays behind and suddenly changes his mind, choosing to attack another place. Without spending many seconds, he again has the beast in front of him about to attack him. In an instant, Taeho says he has only one method he can think of, and hopefully it will work. Then we see how the Prota, like the previous time, says the warrior's burden is like a storm. And just as White Fang impacts the hammer against the ground, in the blink of an eye, Taeho is in the air without a scratch. While in the air, Taeho remembered that he had to survive, and more because of Heda's wish that she would not die, and he wanted to see her again. With a subtle flashback, we see Taeho recalling his conversation with Heda in his training, in which, apart from telling him not to die, he told him that the power to summon a saga and develop it. And Heda ended by telling him that everything depended on him alone. Suddenly, Taeho interrupts the flash, telling them not to be negative by calling for death. Back with Taeho over White Fang, the Prota thinks that if the warrior's charge, which is like a storm, gives her speed of movement, what would happen if she used it in another way? Without wasting a moment more, Taeho performs a deft kicking movement from the air in free fall to gain more momentum, and without releasing his sword, he impacts directly into the skull of White Fang, like an accurate arrow. We see that Comelo Blanco is holding the hammer in his hands when he receives Taeho's lightning. After the collision, we see Taeho badly wounded on the ground, while the beast splashes blood all around him from the wound caused by Taeho, giving our Prota a chance to get up, while he is grateful not to have died, thanks to IDUN's blessing. Standing up, Taeho realizes that the fierce boss still has the sword embedded in his head. Without much hesitation, he knows that this is his only chance to finish off the beast. Without wasting any more time and knowing that he needs a weapon, through the saga, he manages to generate an energy sword, the warrior's sword, and launches himself directly into an attack towards the beast, achieving victory in front of everyone. Taeho demonstrates its courage. Another sight shows the back of a woman on a balcony, who is moving the pieces on a board while telling someone that they are winning. As the young woman turns around, she introduces herself as the Valkyrie Rasgrid and greets Odin, a black raven on the spot, but he replies that he is Hugin. After that, Rasgrid exhales, feeling a little calmer. Raven asks her if anyone stood out during the fight, to which she pauses. Again, Hugin continues to speak and analyzes that perhaps there is no one, because they are the lower-class warriors. But he is interrupted by Rasgrid, who tells him that there was a warrior with impressive abilities. He was Taeho. Further ahead back in the fight, we see Taeho with the sword on top of the dead beast, while the other gladiators celebrate the victory and give thanks to the god Odin. A little badly wounded, but still standing, we see Taeho staggering after his great feat. Then he notices the joy of all the fighters around him for the triumph, which makes him remember his glory days as a winner of video game tournaments when he raised his victory cups. Again, we see as Taeho holds the sword in his hand that he recognizes his weapon as the sword of Runefang, one of the few powerful swords, but has become a common low-level weapon, leading Taeho to assume that it has been upgraded to a higher level. Taeho wants to continue listening to the applause in his honor, so he wants to be much stronger, something that happens immediately when everyone present begins to chant his name as Taeho, the god of war, who will be the best of Valhalla. Suddenly, he is startled out of his thoughts when someone grabs him by his shoulder, turning around and congratulating him on his great work and telling him that he thought it was his last supper. It was Bjorn who gives him his merit in front of the rest of the fighters, recognizing that he has improved the handling of his saga, and that idea of creating a sword in the air was really amazing. Taeho thanks him, telling him that it has been for his support and for the Hedda. Taeho tells Bjorn that this is the first time he has made a sword appear, but he believes he can make it appear and disappear whenever he wants. Bjorn is happy about that and tells him that it is time to move, but Taho is tired. Bjorn tells him that the real objective is to recover a fortress on the top of a mountain, but because it is so far away, it is necessary that they rest in that same place. Taeho does not like very much the idea of having to sleep in the place close to the recent battle. A few hours later, night falls, and with the cold between the mountains, the fighters have made a shelter with tents. Yawning can be heard in one of the tents. It was Taeho yawning, exhausted from the long day that has barely been a single day and has already had 2 confrontations, as he tries to rest on his bed a little exhausted. Taeho begins to think about how strong he has become. Then he moves his right hand, and you have access to your progress information. There he notes that he has increased the percentage of his saga as an immortal warrior to 5%, as well as the level of his runes, which makes the Prota happy that the synchronization rate has improved and he has acquired extra space for the saga, which makes him assume that he will be able to use 2 sagas at the same time. However, he is interrupted by someone in his tent, a warrior who informs him with a subtle smile that he has a visitor. This is something that surprises Taeho, who does not know why the warrior is smiling. As he leaves the tent, a group of combatants observe him with faces of joy, shyness, mischief, something that puzzles Prota, who thinks why they are watching him like that and does not understand what is going on. As he walks through the crowd, he suddenly stops and stares into the distance. In the middle of the bonfire, surrounded by several warriors celebrating with their cups of alcohol, he sees the beautiful Hedda, who has come to visit him, and when she sees him arrive, she is very happy, calling him by his name, Taeho. Hedda, being on her knees, between tears and screams, tells our Prota that she is sorry. Her face of shame and despair is very noticeable as she apologizes to our Prota. But what actually happened was, 5 minutes before, Hedda asks our Prota to show him all the achievements he has had in his life, and he is very afraid of being able to show it to anyone else, calming down immediately as the goddess clarifies that he can show it to anyone who really wants to show it to him. When his achievements are shown, Hida is shocked to see something that no one really expected. He defeated the Orc Warlord, Graksia, defeated the Ogre Lord, Grandoll, defeated the Trinity, Blue Flame Troll, conquered the Giant Hill, rescued Princess Emerode, defeated the Black Dragon, captured Maginot Fortress, suppressed the Demon Kingdom, repelled the Dragon Legion, and many, many more. Hida immediately threw herself on the floor, imploring forgiveness for 5 minutes, with many tears and a wish that it would never happen again to address with superiority such a powerful being and with such accomplishments. Our Prota finds this scene adorable. He really likes how Hida has a cute look even with her panicked look. Moments later, Hida confesses to our Prota that there is a secret that he had not told him all this time, and that is that they are actually in a video game. Taeho could not believe it. He was in a video game where all the achievements he got as a great MVP in his past life within his favorite video game now belonged to them as if he had really made them. The Prota could not believe it. However, he could understand everything a little faster than expected and falls into a kind of inner emptiness, thinking that his comfort in the afterlife makes him feel really strange. Hida makes our Prota realize that he does not have a limited number of times to summon his saga. Basically, he can summon it as many times as he requires. However, since Taeho has a very high and advanced level, it seems that after each summoning of his saga, he will have a cooldown time. Therefore, he will not be able to summon another saga until after a while, so you have to think carefully when to use it and when it is really going to be useful. This leaves our Prota speechless and a bit fearful of the situations he may encounter in the future. Then Taeho thinks carefully about his next step and, while analyzing his current sagas, comes to the conclusion that he should have at least one attack skill. So he decides to invoke his saga as a skill. The eyes of a dragon see through all things. Hida, a bit terrified but intrigued by what is happening, watches Taeho with curiosity about what he has decided to invoke. Our Prota realizes that his vision has improved, and he now has the ability to see through things, as if he were analyzing targets in a video game. In other words, he can meet any person in complete detail. And since the Protagonist is not a top pervert, he decides to look at Hida and realizes that he can see her name, her description, and her completely naked body. This causes Taeho, very flushed, to explode with nerves and faint. Without a doubt, he is a complete pervert. Hida worries about our Prota, because it looks like his head exploded when, ironically, this is what actually happened inside him. Taeho has to leave anyway. Hida already knows how amazing he is and lets him know it. In turn, he tells him that he will become incredibly strong in the future and, with a tight hug, reminds him that he is his lucky charm because he joined his legion, IDUM. Thanks to that strong hug, our very perverted Prota explodes again because of his nerves and his very filthy mind. Shortly after Hida left, a soldier approaches our hero's tent, asking if he is available to talk. Our Prota, with a slightly apologetic look on his face and an iron helmet covering his head, replies that he is available and asks if anything is wrong. The soldier introduces himself as Rolf, belonging to the ULLR Legion. He claims to be a warrior from the Siri unit who will be joining the RAGNAL unit. This soldier comes to tell Taeho that everyone else is gathered at his unit's outpost, so his reason for the visit is to go find him so he can join the others. Then Taeho, without thinking twice, uses his saga to evaluate the soldier in front of him, and, indeed, realizes that his name is Rolf. His nickname is Wolf Hunter, and he belongs to the ULLR Legion. Moreover, as if that were not enough, he lowers his gaze a little and sees the lighter parts of the soldier. Much embarrassed, he looks down in shame, turns and deactivates his saga, blaming himself for having left the power on when he really didn't need it. In the next scene, the soldier and the Prota make their way to the meeting point, while Rolf lets Taeho know that he feels a little envious because a Valkyrie came to visit him. The red-haired man confesses his envy and admiration for the Prota at the same time, because if a Valkyrie were to visit him, he could brag about it forever. Taeho, very proud, puts aside the situation to ask the warrior what is the blessing of the legion to which he belongs. The warrior replies to the Prota that his blessing is stealth and tracking, and that he can choose only one of the two. Eventually, he may have both. Rolf was one of the warriors who chose stealth, and it is justified because tracking, as it sounds, is the ability to pursue an enemy with even the smallest trail. In the next scene, they arrive where everyone is gathered and head straight to talk to the commander. Our prota, a bit elated, realizes that the commander of the entire legion is a woman and lets him know that this is the first time he has seen a woman who is not a Valkyrie in Valhalla. The commander stands up from her chair, asking if he is the warrior who defeated the giant today. As this happens, the TAEHO notices the large, intimidating aura that the commander possesses and mentions that his aura is larger than that of any warrior present in the camp. Then TAEHO, with his dragon eyes, realizes that the person in front of him is called Ciri of the ULLR Legion and is nicknamed the Human Slayer. From the sky appears a blue flash that turns out to be a Valkyrie. Our prota, with many nerves, realizes that it is a Valkyrie of RASGRI, but at the same time perceives that it has a slightly different nickname. The Valkyrie in front is RASGRID of Odin's Legion and is nicknamed the Ice Princess. The Valkyrie introduces herself and claims to be in charge of that battlefield. The Valkyrie came to report that, as Ragnar has died, the unit has been integrated with that of Ciri. Then, the Valkyrie casts a scroll noting the remarkable efforts, and for those who have made great contributions, a reward will be given. For TAEHO, who single-handedly defeated the Null unit leader, the giant Null, as a reward he will receive a bag of gold coins, a rune, and 10 contribution points to his legion. TAEHO can't contain his excitement that he is starting to become famous in that place. In the background, murmurs of the other warriors can be heard, talking about whether it was really he who defeated the giant and whether it was not he who had received a visit from a Valkyrie. On the other hand, the Ice Princess asks for silence and indicates that, on the following day, they will recover the fortress and will specifically use the Rain of Steel, and all the warriors present will participate in it. The prota, with some confusion, wonders what Steel Rain is, and, seeing that everyone is celebrating, turns and interrupts ROLPH's celebration to ask him exactly what it is. To which he replies that he doesn't know either. The next day, the Ice Princess leads the entire crew to war and orders all soldiers to charge to the attack. The scenery is imposing: fortified structures, mobile shooting towers, warriors with bows, swords, axes, and hammers attacking the castle of the dreaded Red-Eye boss. The big fight begins. Monsters and Vikings face each other in a fierce battle, while, in another scene, the real plan is revealed. The commander explains that, when the siege begins, they will take advantage of the enemy's focus on the front. While Ciri's unit distracts the adversary, the fortress gate will be unprotected. The unit will then be able to scale the walls, open the gate, and reach the runic magic control room. Arolf, with some curiosity, wonders if they will scale the walls using the Steel Rain. Our prota, without much patience, thinks Rolf is a braggart, pretending to know the plan when he doesn't even know what Steel Rain really means. The plan sounds a bit strange, and TAEHO, full of doubts, wonders if the Steel Rain will be some kind of teleportation or a secret technique to infiltrate the castle. Well, the Steel Rain turns out to be a giant barrel in which several warriors will be propelled by a catapult directly towards the castle. Rolf, excited, asks our prota if he is also looking forward to the Steel Rain. TAEHO, with a sigh, answers no, not at all. Next to him, a Viking shouts with fervor that he is going straight to Valhalla, to which TAEHO, with some irony, reminds him that they are already in Valhalla. The war horn sounds. Everyone is ready to launch. Our protagonist, terrified, screams the name Hedda as he is thrown into a giant barrel with his companions, propelled by the huge catapult. The barrel flies several meters from the outside of the wall, piercing the chaos of battle. Below, Vikings and monsters are torn apart as the barrel impacts with force, piercing the first wall protecting the control room. Many warriors are injured, including TAEHO, who feels he almost lost his life. The commander, with a firm voice, orders them to prepare for battle as a horde of enemies is approaching. Suddenly, gigantic insects appear surrounding the troops. Then the prota realizes that these insects move in groups of 5 and discovers that, if they defeat the leader, the others will become mere mindless creatures. ROF nods, but is concerned that all the insects look the same. Unable to distinguish the leader, they would have to rely on their luck to hit the right insect. Then TAEHO, using his dragon eyes, realizes that, among each group of 5 insects, 4 are simply giant insects, but one of them is more robust and has a different name. Hearing this, the commander approaches him and asks him to point out with certainty which is the lead insect, so that she can mark it as a target. Without hesitation, our proto points to the leaders of each group: the fast giant insect, the beautiful giant insect, and the popular giant insect, making way for the warriors to finish annihilating the rest of the monsters. The enemy troop blows its horn, calling the night warriors to rush into the siege and resume frontal attacks. The commander, noticing the situation, asks Rolf to mobilize a detached squad and head for the control room, taking the TAEHO warrior with him. Trusting him, the commander entrusts the mission to the IDUN warrior. Rolf suggests to TAEHO to stay close to activate ULLR's blessing, which, let's remember, is about stealth. Thanks to this ability, the squadron manages to cross the battlefield without being seen. They take advantage of having previously memorized the map and open a hidden door just below the battlefield, accessing a temporary passage that will take them directly to the control room. As they move through the corridors, our proto feels more and more uncomfortable. With each step, the cobwebs increase, and he can't help but wonder what kind of place this is and why it seems so abandoned. With no other choice, they continue walking, unaware that, just behind them, a terrifying creature lurks in the shadows. The squad continues to advance down the corridor as the huge beast is at their heels. ROF, in a low but firm voice, warns them to be careful with every step. Suddenly, a dry sound and a muffled scream break the silence. One of their companions has been eaten by a spider, so TAEHO, his heart in his throat, signals Rolf to look up. Before them is revealed an imposing wolf spider, its colossal size and its jaw still dripping with the remains of its victim. The impact is inevitable. The beast devours the fellow without mercy. Rolf, aware that it is too late to save him, assumes that the spider is hungry. Very hungry. Using his dragon eyes, TAEHO manages to perceive that it is not just a single spider, since behind the first one, a swarm of these creatures is watching them from the shadows, so they must quickly decide whether to fight or escape. With surprising calm, TAEHO analyzes the situation. He discovers that the specialty of these spiders is their paralyzing venom, but also notes that their weakness is fire. Without hesitation, he summons the mighty sword RUNEFANG. Rolf, impressed, watches as the flame-wrapped blade appears in the PROTA's hands. TAEHO, demonstrating his dexterity, throws the sword with precision at the ceiling, right in the center of the spider congregation. The effect is immediate. Fire breaks out, engulfing everything in fiery chaos. Wasting no time, the Proteus shouts to the team to seize the opportunity and move on. They run through the tunnel, with the flames roaring behind them. As they flee, the team can't help but ask the Proto if he is a wizard or if the sword is an irretrievable loss. He, without holding back, assures them that he can summon another one. To him, it's just another summoning. With some luck, they manage to find the right path, although the army of spiders keeps chasing them. At the end of the corridor, a picturesque door indicates that they have reached the expected destination. Without thinking, Rolf goes through the door followed by TAEHO and the other warrior, who, terrified, asks them to close the door immediately. In an unexpectedly comical scene, as Rolf and the other warrior struggle with the heavy iron door, and TAEHO awkwardly fights off a spider that managed to sneak in with them. He strikes the arachnid repeatedly with his sword, almost as if it were an annoying insect on a summer's day. Finally, they manage to close the door, and our proto ends up with the intruding spider. They take a breath, feeling that, at least for a moment, they are safe. Looking around the room, TAEHO wonders if it really is the control room. They see only a table with a central panel, emitting an intriguing glow. Rolf explains that it is actually the emergency control room, a secondary one hidden in the fortress, which explains the difficult access and lack of guards. Without wasting any more time, Rolf takes out a medal and places it on the panel screen. A cold, mechanical voice confirms the emergency authorization key. Suddenly, a female figure emerges from the screen. Her appearance is surprisingly attractive, introducing herself as Black Fortress. Her seductive voice welcomes you and asks you to issue an order. Rolf and the other warrior are absorbed, mesmerized by the beauty of the figure. Our proto, somewhat exasperated, wonders if they were not in a hurry to open the castle door. Finally, reacts. With a hurried tone, he asks the artificial intelligence to open the door of the fortress. The figure nods and, without preamble, opens the wrong iron door, the same one that separated the safe room from the horde of wolf spiders. Rolf, with a cry of panic, clarifies that he was not referring to that door, but to the main door of the fortress. After correcting the mistake, the fortress door opens. Our warriors feel a momentary relief. They have accomplished their mission. Now all that remains is to defend their position until the Allied forces take full control of the fortress. With the tension easing, our elf, with his characteristic nonchalant tone, suggests that they use the time to talk about women. However, the figure at the table interrupts their frivolous chatter. He warns that an intruder is approaching the control room and is prepared for combat. No sooner does the warning end than the heavy iron door collapses with a clang. The dust dissipates, revealing a shocking scene. An army of spiders lies destroyed, crushed and broken into pieces. The intruder has wiped out all the creatures in a matter of seconds. Then Proto focuses his sights. Among the debris and the remains of the spiders, a figure rises. Its red eye glows with terrifying intensity. Undoubtedly, they are facing the feared boss Red Eye, leader of the Rats of Valhalla. In a deep, angry voice, the boss promises to tear them to pieces. So Taeho, roll, and the other warrior prepare for battle without hesitation. The enemy, swinging his imposing hammer, attacks without mercy. With a single blow, he knocks down one of Prota's companions, knocking him out. The boss, his red eye flashing, looks for the next target, but realizes that Taeho has disappeared. Taeho is on the roof, preparing a somersault. He plans to repeat the same strategy with which he defeated the previous boss. But the red eye boss is no ordinary opponent. Just when our Proto falls with great speed, the boss releases his hammer, jumps in his direction, and catches him in midair. With a brutal move, he throws it to the ground, executing a devastating attack called Sepulchral Stone Pilot. The impact is devastating. Rolf, wide-eyed, can hardly believe his eyes. Taeho lies on the ground, and all indications are that this could be the end of him. Our Proto lies on the ground, about to be annihilated, while Rolf worries about the situation and cannot find what to do to save his life. Taeho, for his part, feels a great warmth and wonders if that is the warm feeling of the all-too-familiar death. When he falls back into himself, he realizes that he was not dead yet and sees how the boss is going to crush his head in a few moments. Rolf decides to use his saga, which is called Explosive Shot. With his crossbow, he fired an explosive arrow at the boss and shouted to the Proto and the other warrior to gather while the boss was recovering from the explosion. Red Eye looks coldly at Rolf, wanting to end his existence, and just at that moment, the boss gets into conflict. Ironically, it is a situation that, in fractions of seconds, the Proto was able to appreciate and was able to take advantage of it to save his own life. The boss stops and wonders who he should eliminate first, the annoying archer, or finish off the one he was stomping on. Taeho realizes the situation and pretends to be on his way to Valhalla, to which the boss says he will really finish off Rolf, the annoying archer who fired the explosive arrow. The boss prepares to attack the warrior with great anger, while Rolf prepares to fire his gun again. While the boss was distracted, our Proto, despite the great pain he was suffering, decides to get up and attack again because he is not finished yet. The Proto attacks again with a lot of energy, summoning Runefang and hits a clean cut on the boss Red Eye. This cut left Rolf, the other warrior, and the boss completely frozen. Prota's hit on the boss cut off the boss's little parts. Red Eye was perplexed, as were Rolf and the other warrior. They both thought alike and said that Taeho had crossed the line, and that this blow was too much for the situation they were in. Rolf tells the Proto that he had indeed crossed the line and gone too far, and that they need to end the boss's suffering quickly. The boss was on the floor, crying and suffering for his loss, to which Taeho summoned up his courage and, like a real man, apologizes to him for what had happened. He summons again his saga, the Sword Warrior, and incredibly the boss's hammer appears, which is called the Skull Crusher. The Proto, without holding on a second longer, swung the hammer against the boss's skull and ended its existence. Rolf and the other warrior, astonished, the only word that came out of their mouths was the name of the goddess of our Proto, Idun. Both warriors celebrated in the name of Idun's long life. As Taeho appreciated how in front of him appeared a panel with statistics telling him that his synchronization rate was at 7%, the siege of the Black Fortress ended in victory for the warriors of Valhalla. In the next scene, we can appreciate the head of the Ice Main boss. Many warriors, while holding the head, celebrate that victory in the name of the god of lightning, Thor. The final boss of the Knoll Legion was Malena Helada, and he was killed by a warrior of Thor's legion named Braki. All this was happening while a raven watched them and telepathically communicated with Rasgrid, commenting to him if, instead of Braki, he is more curious about a boy named Lee, Taeho. All this while, the bird slowly flies away in the background and the warriors celebrate their great victory. Right on the evening of the same day, the warriors celebrate their victory arduously. They celebrate with alcohol while the more powerful warriors buy the booze. Everyone is celebrating the victory, while Taeho is on top of the wall, looking at the scenery and resting a bit from the day he had. Minutes later, Taeho is looking into the distance and hears a voice asking him if he is all right. As he turns his face, he realizes he is talking to Rolf and replies that he honestly thought he was going to lose his life that day. The red-haired warrior, with a slightly mischievous smile, replies that he was scared when he was crashing to the ground, and even so, he is glad that our Prota is still alive. While these warriors are having a conversation, a female voice is heard right behind them. It turns out to be Ciri, the commander, who asks them if she can join their conversation for a moment. As the commander approaches, with a smile on her face and a little drunk, she tells the warriors that the special unit did a great job, so she would like to offer them a drink. Rolf, like a typical warrior with no female contact, blushing, tells her that he would be honored and that he has always wanted to have a drink with the commander. Hearing this, all the warriors who were celebrating tell the captain that they also want to have a drink with her, and without further ado, the celebration of this great victory continues. All the warriors, with drink in hand, celebrate for Captain Ciri. Taeho, with drink in hand, observes in the distance, muttering to all his companions that the commander was a cold person, while the red-haired warrior tells the anecdotes of the wolf spiders and how our Prota cut off his little parts to the boss Red Eye. While this situation was happening, Taeho observes with some tranquility to know the other side of the commander and realize that she is not such a scary person, who can also have other kinds of emotions. Days and nights go by, and in the citadel of the Black Fortress, the celebrations continue after the victory. Fights between Vikings, dances, drinks, lots of fun, and Taeho, our Prota, wonders when this great disaster is going to end. Some drunken Vikings decide to show the Prota something funny, and then they all start beating each other up. While Taeho is watching them, a female figure is seen behind all the commotion. The figure belongs to the White Valkyrie, the Ice Princess. She calls our Prota by name. When he turns around, all the Vikings are perplexed by the sight of the Ice Princess, amazed that, despite the late hour, she is in such a place. The princess tells our Prota that she has a visitor. Hida says hello, a little apprehensive, but excited. After this situation, all the Vikings make a fuss, celebrating the fact that such an attractive Valkyrie sought out Taeho for a simple conversation, or perhaps something more. The Prota, noticing this situation, asks Heda to leave the place as quickly as possible. Right after that, all the Vikings start shouting that it's a very hot situation for those young men, and that they feel a bit envious of him. Just as the Vikings were about to continue drinking, the Ice Princess tells them no, and that the Ciri unit has a special mission the next day, so they should get some sleep. The next morning, in an icy place, all the warriors are gathered and see the Prota approaching, looking very tired. Everyone, including Rolf, asks him if he had fun last night and why he is so exhausted if he just went with a Valkyrie, to which Taeho replies that he apologizes for not being able to comment to them, but he was asked to keep last night a secret. Everyone, without hesitation, thought and said at the same time that there was indeed something after all. The Prota does not hesitate for a second to deny this comment, thinking about what is hanging around his neck at that very moment. At that moment, the commander arrives and asks everyone to pay attention, because from now on they have a new special mission to carry out, and their new target is located east of the Black Fortress. That place is called the Dwarf Mine. When the GNOLLS took the fortress, the dwarves sealed the mine and took refuge, but have not been heard from since. Your mission is to go straight there and check the situation for themselves. Then Taeho, after a concept of what dwarves are like because of their previous life, wonders if they will be the same as those who inhabit that world. Rolf comments to the Proto that dwarves go crazy for beer, and that maybe he can have a drink after a long while, to which our Proto simply thinks that the warrior has less than 12 hours of alcohol in him. The dwarves are the bravest among the men. Even their women have beards, which the protagonist says he doesn't like very much, and the commander interrupts them, saying that the briefing is not over yet. He lets his team know that there is quite a considerable distance from their starting point to the dwarf mine, and that, to minimize travel time as much as possible, they are going to use the Black Lightning as their mode of transportation. Everyone, with much enthusiasm, strength, and energy, celebrates the Black Lightning, including Aro Elf. Our Proto turns to tell him that he probably doesn't know what it is, and sure enough, the green-haired warrior replies that he doesn't know. Now we are back to the previous night. Taeho, together with Hedda, are in a room alone. While Hedda asks him to keep secret everything they have talked about that night, the Valkyrie gets up from the bed and hands, a little blushing, a pendant with a golden apple to our Proto. In turn, Hedda tells Taeho that the necklace should be worn because it increases the speed of recovery. In addition, he gives her a fragment of golden apple, as it has excellent healing, detoxification, curse lifting, and even beauty treatment effects. Finally, Hedda gives Taeho a kiss right on the forehead, wishing Idun's blessing to be with him. In a following scene, we see the Proto buried under the cold snow, right in front of the dwarf's mine, and the entire field in front of the mine gates is littered with black coffins. Taeho is amazed to actually be alive, and did not expect to be thrown in the same way as with the barrel, but now with black coffins. Anyway, it is indeed not a normal thing. Turning to look around, our Proto notices that all the warriors are under the cold snow and wonders whether or not they are actually all still alive after that. Then, noticing that his necklace is glowing, he realizes that this is the reason he is still unharmed. A few moments later, when they are all on their feet and in perfect condition, they stand in front of the mine door, and the commander tells them it is time to enter. Inside, the warriors realize that it is a very dark place and mutter that dwarves hate sunlight. On the other hand, they also mutter that they turn to stone if direct light hits them. As they progress through the mine, they gradually speculate about the dwarves. Siri stops and announces in a loud voice the arrival of the warriors from Valhalla and that the Valkyrie Rasgrid sent them. Our Proto, noticing that there is no movement, makes use of his dragon eye and notices that there are many red names. Alert the commander, and she gives the order to make a shield wall because they are surrounded. Countless arrows fell around the warriors, who were in an ambush set by the dwarves. Many warriors were wounded with the arrows. Some others did not hit the target, and, when the attack ceased, the commander asked the Proto if he could identify the enemy from a small gap in his shield wall. Then Taeho, with his dragon eye, visualizes a dwarf and, in a panic, announces that dwarves are zombies. Rolf, a bit frightened, asks why the dwarves are zombies and why there are zombies in that place, while the rest of the warriors are just as worried. The commander states that if they are dwarf zombies, they should listen to the instructions until the end, since the tricky part is that they are already dead.